Hello. So, my cousin's moving into my grandma's house and wants me to drop out of college to babysit her kids, for free. But who's going to take care of her when the family rage finally comes for her? Hi, I'm Maya, I'm 22, and I've come to the almighty Reddit to tell my story. 3 weeks ago, my cousin Jessica, who's 28, showed up at our family home with her 3 kids, 5-year-old twins and a 7-year-old boy. Their dad's no longer in the picture. She said she needed a place to crash for a while because her landlord had kicked her out for not paying rent. My 74-year-old grandma, Ruth, who owns the house, said yes right away. I live with my grandma because I'm finishing my degree at a nearby community college. I also work part-time as a cashier at a local bank to cover tuition and help with household expenses. Grandma gets Social Security, but it's not much, so I pitch in around $400 a month for food and utilities. We had a pretty smooth routine. She'd watch her telenovelas in the afternoons while I studied, and I handled most of the cooking and cleaning since her arthritis makes it hard for her to get around. But the first week after Jessica moved in? Total chaos. The kids trashed the living room every single day, scribbled on the walls with crayons, and the 7-year-old even broke Grandma's favorite lamp while running through the house. Jessica just shrugged and said, "Kids will be kids," then went right back to scrolling on her phone while the kids screamed and fought nonstop. I tried to be understanding. I started buying groceries for 6 people instead of 2, which took up nearly my entire paycheck. I came home every night from school and work and cleaned up the disaster they left behind. Then last Monday, I was having breakfast before my 8 a.m. accounting class when Jessica sat down next to me. She said she'd been thinking about our situation and had a solution. She wanted me to quit my job and take care of her kids full-time so she could finally, get her life together and land a decent job. I looked at her, still half asleep because I'd gotten up early to study, not to hear nonsense. But she was serious and said it made perfect sense. She explained that childcare around here is expensive, and if I did it, it wouldn't cost us anything. She said I could always go back to school later, once the kids were in full-time school. I told her no right away. Honestly, the only reason I didn't say it faster was because I was still trying to process what I was reading, and what she was saying. I'm not even sure which was harder to make sense of, because Jessica's idea was completely ridiculous. I told her I only had 1 semester left before I graduate and that I wasn't about to sacrifice any of that for kids who aren't mine. I also said my job pays well and I need that income for tuition and to help Grandma. That's when she hit me with, "You're just like the rest of the family, selfish." Yeah, clearly not the first time she's heard no. Jessica started crying and said she had nowhere to go. She told me I was the only one who could help her, and if I really loved her and her kids, I'd make that sacrifice. I got up from the table and left for class without saying another word. I'd already wasted enough breath. When I got home that night, Grandma was waiting in the kitchen. She said Jessica had been crying all day and maybe I should consider helping her out. I explained that I couldn't quit my job or drop out of school, especially with just 1 semester to go. Besides, without my paycheck, there wouldn't be much money coming in. Jessica doesn't work, and Grandma's income alone isn't enough. In the following days, Jessica kept bringing up the nanny idea. She kept saying how tired she was and how hard it is to take care of 3 kids on her own. Then she started leaving them with Grandma for hours while she went out. But Grandma can barely handle 1 energetic kid, let alone 3. She's old and not in the best health. She was exhausted. Then on Thursday, I came home from work and found her passed out on the couch while the twins were bouncing all over the furniture and the 7-year-old was in the kitchen trying to make a sandwich, with a sharp knife. I jumped in immediately and calmed the kids down with some snacks and cartoons. 2 hours later, Jessica waltzed in with shopping bags from Target. I asked her where she'd been, and she told me she needed some me time and had gone shopping because none of her clothes fit anymore. Then Friday morning, she cornered me again, this time with a written schedule. She wanted me to watch the kids from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. She said that would give her time to look for a job and maybe take some online classes to boost her skills. I asked her what would happen to my own classes and job, and she told me to find online classes and a remote night shift job. That I should just make it work. I told her she should try making her brain work. That's when she started yelling, saying I was being rude, that I was insulting her, that I was selfish. She said if Grandma had raised us to help one another, then I should do that and stop being a rebel without a cause. Our shouting woke Grandma up. She came out of her room, shuffling her feet, and asked what all the noise was about. Jessica immediately burst into tears and told Grandma I was treating her horribly. Grandma looked at me, clearly disappointed, and asked if we couldn't find some kind of middle ground. That weekend was even worse. Jessica told the kids that Aunt Maya didn't want to spend time with them, which made me feel awful. Because I do care about those kids. Maybe not enough to take care of them full time, but they're completely innocent in all this. The real problem is Jessica, period. The kids started avoiding me and being cold every time I tried to talk to them. Then Sunday night, Jessica sat me down again. She said she'd been thinking all weekend and was willing to pay me to babysit. She offered me $200 a week, less than half of what I make at the bank. When I pointed that out, she said I should consider that I wouldn't have to spend anything on transportation or work clothes. She also said spending time with kids would reward me in other ways. Money wasn't even the main issue. I'm so close to finishing my degree and starting my actual career. I already have some potential interviews lined up with local firms for after graduation. Then yesterday, Jessica announced she'd found a possible job at a retail store. But she said she couldn't accept the job without reliable childcare. She told me the position paid $12 an hour and had good potential for growth. Then she looked me dead in the eye and said this was my chance to really help the family. I laughed. Right in front of her. Because that job pays less than mine, and she wants me to give up my job to take care of her kids so she can go work somewhere that pays even worse? Jessica's intelligence was clearly not present in this conversation. I made that clear, and told her my answer was still no. She added that if I wasn't willing to help, she might have to move in with her ex-boyfriend's mother in another state. And if that happened, our grandma might never see the kids again. I told her that if that's what's best for her and the kids, then she should go ahead and do it. Grandma overheard that conversation and pulled me aside afterward. She told me she didn't want Jessica and the kids to leave, especially since they're her only great-grandchildren. She asked me if there was any way I could help, even just for a few months, until Jessica got on her feet. I could see how much it meant to her. But I also knew that if I gave in now, there would always be another excuse, just a few more months. If I said yes, I'd end up raising those kids until I was 35. 35 years old because of them, not me. I'm supposed to graduate this December. I've worked so hard to get here, taking classes while holding a job and helping take care of my grandma. I've already been accepted into the state university's bachelor's program, and I have a partial scholarship. If I drop out now or delay, I could lose all of that. The only person I truly feel bad for, besides the kids, who unfortunately have a self-centered alien as a mother, is my grandma. She's just an elderly woman who enjoys having people in the house. Before all of this, she lived alone. She's the only reason I haven't opened the spaceship hatch to let the alien float off into the void. And honestly, maybe if we're lucky, a UFO will run her over and solve a lot of problems. Then the kids can be looked after by their grandmother, or whoever. So yeah, this is where things stand. Update 1. Hi again. I just wanted to let you all know what's been happening since my original post. First off, I really appreciate the advice I received. A lot of people told me to hold my boundaries and not give up my education, which is exactly what I'm trying to do here. Others suggested I try to find a compromise that works for everyone, but honestly, I just don't see how. I already have a nearly full-time job and a heavy class load. I'm basically pushing through to the finish line, just hoping things ease up, financially and emotionally, once I'm done. The week after my first post, Jessica kept pressuring me every single day about watching the kids. Then she started getting the kids involved in her little campaign. She'd say things out loud while I was in the room, like, "Sorry, we can't go to the park or get snacks because mommy doesn't have a job and Auntie Maya isn't helping her get one." The kids started asking me why I wouldn't help their mom. I told them, sometimes, moms are just bad moms, who'd rather point fingers than try harder. Grandma was getting more exhausted by the day. The kids would wake her up super early every morning, and Jessica kept leaving them with her for hours while she disappeared. When I asked Jessica where she went during those long absences, she always gave vague answers about job interviews or errands. That Tuesday, I decided to try a different approach. I sat down with Jessica and offered a compromise. I told her I could watch the kids for a few hours on weekends and maybe one evening a week, so she could attend interviews or take care of important tasks. I explained that this was the absolute most I could do without sacrificing my job and my classes. Jessica rejected it immediately. She said weekend babysitting wouldn't help her land a full-time job, and that my offer just showed I didn't really understand her situation. She accused me of making symbolic gestures just to look good. I don't know where I stashed that flamethrower I so desperately need right now. That weekend, I noticed Jessica spent a lot of time on her phone, constantly stepping out to take calls. When I asked who she was talking to, she said potential employers and housing assistance programs. It sounded promising, but something felt off. Then again, everything with Jessica feels off. On Monday, I had class until late and didn't get home until after 9 p.m. When I walked in, I found Grandma sitting in the kitchen, looking worried. The kids were already asleep. Jessica was nowhere in sight. I asked Grandma what was going on, and she told me Jessica had left that morning for a job interview and said she'd be back by lunchtime. She never came back. Grandma had been watching the kids all day. It was the third time that week Jessica disappeared for the whole day, leaving Grandma alone with 3 small children. I was furious. Grandma is 74 and suffers from arthritis. Taking care of 3 kids for 12 hours straight is absolutely not something she should be doing. When Jessica finally showed up around 11 p.m., I confronted her for abandoning her responsibilities. She claimed she'd been at a second interview that ran long, followed by mandatory paperwork for the job. But when I asked her for details about the position, her story started to change. First, she said it was at a restaurant. Then she said it was at a store. Then something about customer service. That's when I started to suspect she was lying about these so-called job interviews. The next day, I did something I probably shouldn't have done. While Jessica was out on yet another interview and Grandma was napping, I looked through some papers Jessica had left on the kitchen counter. I found several unpaid bills, including a credit card with over $3,000 in debt and no payments in the last 4 months. There were also late notices from a rent-to-own store and documents from a payday loan. But the most shocking thing I found was a bank statement showing regular deposits of $800 every 2 weeks, for the past 2 months. Jessica had been receiving unemployment benefits this entire time, all while claiming she was desperate to find work. According to the dates on the statement, she'd been getting those payments even before she moved in with us. That's when it hit me, Jessica wasn't actually looking for a job. She was collecting unemployment while living rent-free in our house, trying to guilt me into offering free childcare so she could keep dodging real responsibilities. Those long absences weren't job interviews. She was probably hanging out with friends or just enjoying kid-free time. That night, I decided to confront her about what I'd found. I waited until the kids and Grandma were asleep. Then I asked her point-blank if she was receiving unemployment benefits. She went completely pale and immediately got defensive. She admitted it, but said it wasn't enough to live on. She claimed what I saw was before taxes and that most of it went toward the kids and other essentials. When I pointed out that she wasn't paying rent or food while staying with us, she said she needed the money for clothes and transportation to look for work. I asked her about all those so-called interviews. Jessica broke down crying and admitted she'd only been to 2 actual interviews in the past month. She said job hunting was harder than I realized and that she needed mental space to prepare herself before each one. She insisted that leaving the kids with Grandma gave her the time she needed to focus. I couldn't believe it. I told her grandma wasn't a free nanny and that she was taking advantage of an elderly woman's kindness. Jessica started crying again and said I couldn't possibly understand the pressure of being a single mom. I told her, nope. Then she accused me of being jealous because she has kids and I don't. She said I was using my education as an excuse to avoid my family responsibilities and that I thought I was better than her just because I was still in school. Things got really ugly when Jessica claimed that grandma had told her she was disappointed in me for being so selfish. She said grandma told her I hadn't been raised to put ambition over family loyalty. That hit me hard. My relationship with my grandma means everything to me. So I went straight to grandma's room and woke her up. I asked her if she'd really said those things. Grandma looked confused and upset. She told me she'd never called me selfish and that she was proud of all the work I'd put into my education. She admitted she was exhausted from watching the kids so much, but hadn't wanted to complain because she knew Jessica was going through a tough time. When I told her about the unemployment benefits, Grandma was stunned. She had been giving Jessica gas money and helping with other expenses because Jessica had insisted she didn't have a penny, since she wasn't working. Grandma realized she'd been manipulated. The next morning, she asked Jessica to sit down for a conversation. She told her she now knew about the unemployment payments and that she was disappointed by her dishonesty. She explained that she was simply too old to be the primary caregiver for 3 young children, and that Jessica needed to find another solution for daytime care. Jessica's response? She packed up her things and announced she was leaving. She said she couldn't stay somewhere where she wasn't valued or trusted. Claimed she had other relatives who would be happy to help her, unlike us. She spent the day making phone calls and arranging her move. I thought the drama would end there. I was wrong. That night, Jessica's mom, my Aunt Veronica, called Grandma and screamed at her, accusing us of throwing Jessica and the kids out on the street. Apparently, there weren't any relatives willing to take her in. But there was a mother more than willing to point fingers. Grandma explained everything, the lies about the interviews, the unemployment money, all of it. There was a long silence on the line, then Aunt Veronica said she needed to call Jessica to hear her side. Less than an hour later, she called back. She'd discovered Jessica had been telling different stories to different relatives, trying to guilt them all into sending her money or feeling sorry for her. She was furious. Jessica ended up temporarily staying with a friend, but not before sending me a bunch of nasty texts. She blamed me for ruining her life and her kids' future. She told me I'd regret being so selfish one day, when I finally understood that family matters more than professional success. Honestly? The house has been peaceful ever since. Grandma and I are back to our regular routine. She's way more relaxed. And I'm finally focusing again on my final semester. In the end, all it took was calling out the alien queen. Update 2. Things have gotten so weird recently, I had to come back and share what's been happening. After Jessica left our house, things were calm for about 3 weeks. I had almost forgotten the whole drama, until my Aunt Veronica called Grandma with an update. Jessica had been staying with her friend, but that fell apart after just 2 weeks. No surprise there. According to Aunt Veronica, Jessica expected the friend to watch her kids while she went out, just like she did with Grandma. When the friend refused and asked her to pitch in with household expenses, Jessica accused her of being a bad friend and left. After that, Jessica moved in with our cousin Michael and his wife. That lasted exactly 4 days. Michael called my aunt to complain that Jessica was leaving the kids with his wife all day while she disappeared for hours. When they confronted her, Jessica snapped and told him not to be an idiot to a single mother. Michael told her to find somewhere else to stay. At this point, Aunt Veronica had had enough. She decided to do some digging and started calling other family members to see if anyone else had dealt with Jessica before. Turns out, they had. Our cousin shared that Jessica stayed with her family for 3 months 2 years ago. During that time, she tried to convince their teenage daughter to skip school and babysit her kids while she went out. When the daughter refused, Jessica left in the middle of the night, taking some of their jewelry with her. Our cousin Rachel reported the theft, but even after the jewelry was recovered, the judge let it slide because Jessica was a single mom. Another uncle shared a similar story. Jessica stayed at his place for 6 months, claiming she was saving money to get her own apartment. But in reality, she was spending her unemployment benefits on clothes and entertainment, while expecting my uncle's wife to babysit for free. The most disturbing story came from our great-aunt Mari, who's 82. Jessica stayed with her for 2 months last year, supposedly while waiting for an apartment. Mari lives alone and has mobility issues, but she ended up becoming a full-time babysitter while Jessica went out partying. One day, Mari fell and injured her hip trying to chase after one of the kids. Jessica didn't even come back to take her to the hospital. A neighbor had to call an ambulance. That was the final straw for Aunt Veronica. She decided it was time for a family intervention. She organized a meeting with several relatives who had been affected by Jessica's behavior. They all agreed to stop enabling her and made a pact: no one would let her move in again. They'd present a united front. When Jessica was met with this unified stance, she exploded. She accused the entire family of hating her children. She said we were all heartless people who didn't understand what it meant to struggle. She claimed the conditions we were imposing were unfair and discriminatory. Jessica's response to the family meeting was to disappear completely. She stopped answering phone calls and deleted all her social media accounts. For 2 weeks, no one knew where she or the kids were. Aunt Veronica was panicking, terrified about the whereabouts of her grandchildren. Then, last Monday, I got a call at work from Grandma. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. When I finally understood what she was saying, I ran out of work and rushed home. Jessica had shown up that morning while I was at work and Grandma was alone. She brought her 3 kids and several bags, claiming she'd been evicted from where she was staying and had nowhere to go. She told Grandma that I had agreed she could stay temporarily until she figured things out. Grandma, too trusting and caught off guard, let her in. By the time I got home, Jessica had already settled comfortably into the guest room again. The kids were running wild around the house, and Grandma looked completely exhausted. When I confronted Jessica about lying to Grandma, she flat out denied it. She claimed she never said I agreed, just that she hoped I would be more understanding this time. She said she was desperate and out of options and that surely I wouldn't throw 3 innocent children out onto the street. I told Jessica she had to leave immediately or I would call child services. I reminded her that nothing had changed since the last time she was here, and that I was still not willing to provide free childcare. Jessica started crying and begging. She said she just needed a few days to make new arrangements. She promised not to ask for help with the kids and to handle all her responsibilities. Grandma, feeling sympathy for the kids, asked if they could stay just one night while Jessica figured things out. Against my better judgment, I agreed. One night only. That was 5 days ago. Jessica is still here, and she's already repeating the same patterns. Yesterday, I got home from class and found Grandma alone with all 3 kids. Jessica was nowhere to be found. When she finally returned later that night, she said she'd been at the library applying for jobs online. I checked the browser history on Grandma's computer, the one Jessica had been using the past few days. Instead of job applications, I found evidence that she'd spent hours browsing dating sites and social media. She wasn't looking for a job. She was looking for her next victim to move in with. This morning, Jessica cornered me in the kitchen and launched back into her usual speech, how she needed help with the kids so she could work. When I reminded her of her promise not to ask me that, she said circumstances had changed and accused me of being inflexible in a family emergency. That's when it hit me: Jessica will never change as long as the family keeps letting her get away with it. She sees our kindness as weakness, and our boundaries as suggestions, not rules. Every time someone gives her another chance, she takes it as a green light to resume her manipulative behavior. I've had enough. I called Aunt Veronica and told her about Jessica's latest lie, how she manipulated Grandma again and is already breaking her promises. Veronica was furious. We agreed, it's time to set real, enforceable boundaries. Tomorrow, Veronica will come over to have a final conversation with Jessica. We're going to give her two choices: either she leaves voluntarily and starts taking responsibility for her own life, or we take more serious steps to protect Grandma from further manipulation. The saddest part of all of this is that the ones paying the price for Jessica's selfishness and manipulation are her kids. They deserve stability. They deserve a mother who puts their needs before her own comfort. But Jessica seems incapable of offering that kind of responsibility. Veronica also knows I've been considering calling Child Protective Services. That's something we'll discuss tomorrow. Update 3. This past month has been intense, but I think we've finally reached a resolution, one that protects Grandma and gives me peace of mind about my own future. Veronica came to our house one Saturday morning, at a time when Jessica couldn't pretend she was out job hunting. She brought her husband, Uncle Rick, for backup. Together, they sat Jessica down for a serious conversation. Veronica and Uncle Rick gave her an ultimatum: the kids were coming with them right then and there, and she needed to go wherever she had to go to get a job. Jessica agreed, but tried to negotiate. She said that now that the kids wouldn't be in the house, she could stay and use Grandma's home as a base of operations to improve her life. She called it Operation Rebirth, and said she would use our support to become the person everyone expected her to be. Grandma's response? Off my property. Now. Without the kids, Grandma couldn't have cared less about Jessica. So that was that. Jessica left, and the kids went with their grandparents. I graduated 3 weeks ago and earned my degree. Grandma cried during the ceremony, she was so proud. I've already been accepted for transfer to the state university to continue my bachelor's, and I start classes next month. I've also started a new job related to my field, with better pay. I'm still living with Grandma and helping out with the household expenses. We haven't had any direct contact with Jessica since she left, but Aunt Veronica has gotten some updates through the grapevine. Apparently, Jessica lasted about 3 weeks with a high school friend before that arrangement also fell apart. Which is kind of funny, because she always claimed the kids were the problem, but even without them, she's just as exhausting as 3 toddlers combined. Now she's living with someone else. We don't know who. Update 4. My cousin is officially done. Legally done. For about 2 months before what I'm about to share, we had no contact with her. Aunt Veronica only got sporadic updates, stuff like she's looking for work or she has something lined up. But nothing solid enough to justify giving the kids back. During that time, the kids actually found some real stability. With summer over, the oldest went back to school, and the twins started kindergarten. They were doing great. They had structure. No one could have cared for them better than Veronica and Uncle Rick. But then Jessica found out that in a certain state, not only do you get Social Security benefits for being unemployed, but you also receive extra money for each child. That doesn't happen here, where only older adults qualify for unemployment checks. So she showed up at Aunt Veronica's house, trying to get the kids back so she could collect what she claimed was rightfully hers. Veronica and Uncle Rick refused. Jessica hadn't improved her situation at all. And even worse, she admitted that was her plan. So they said no. Jessica came back with the police, accusing them of stealing her children. That launched a full investigation involving Child Protective Services, where literally the entire family gave statements, and every single one of them painted Jessica in a terrible light. The court granted full custody to the grandparents. And as for Jessica? She lost her unemployment benefits too. A fair deal, honestly. I don't think she ever truly deserved them. It's been almost 3.5 months since we've heard from her. But at least now, she can't hurt her kids anymore. And now, we can officially say, in space, no one can hear her scream.